your sanctification, that you abstain not from sex, but from sexual immorality. What's that? Any use of sex outside the boundaries of marriage. That would be sexual immorality. That each one of you know how to control his own body in holiness and honor, not in the passion of lust, like the Gentiles who do not know God. So that's going to be a big challenge. Sex is always going to be on our minds, part of us. I mean, that's how we're wired as men. But especially in this summer season of life, you're going to have to learn to handle the sexual energy so you will not be a slave to it. There's a key word in your 30s in this second half of the summer season, and that word is margin. Be sure you write margin down. Let me tell you how I'm still learning how to do this one, especially in your 30s. Because, man, we're out there, getting going in our career. We're working long hours, and there's nothing wrong with that, I mean, that's that season where you're working hard. You're kind of a warrior. But if you don't learn how to build margin into your calendar, white space, gray space, whatever you want to call it, then, man, it's going to be a monster for the rest of your life. You see, if you don't have margin in your life, you know what suffers? Relationships. You never really connect with other men. You just have the transactional, how you doing? Hey, I'm fine. Yeah, that's it. You don't have time for that, right? You look at an opportunity like being a part of just a 6-week experience. Guys, it's just 6 weeks. But you don't have time. Because you're just thinking, well, I got to do all this other stuff. I'm still learning about margin. I've got a 10-year-old daughter. I got married, when I was 32. My wife is, and I didn't have kids for many years. I traveled so much, and so I've done everything in reverse. So I got a 10-year-old daughter. One day, this need for margin in my life really hit me in the face. I have a habit. It's a good habit of, at the end of the day, on my way home from my office, catching up with all the phone calls that I missed. A lot of you guys do that. I do that. Good use of time, right? Problem was, I would typically pull into the driveway, into the garage, and still be on the phone. And so one day I did that. So I pulled in the garage, and my daughter was about 5 at the time, I guess. And so she comes up, knocks on the window. Hey, Daddy, she was so excited to see me, wanted to show me something. I'm on the phone. And I said, just a minute. She went off, did her stuff, so I'm continuing talking. Goes back a little bit later, knocks on the window. Hey, Daddy, just a minute. Third time, I got a little irritated with it. Because I'm doing business, man. I got a job. I got to pay for all the stuff you love and you enjoy, right? So she comes up, knocks on the window. Hey, Daddy, I said, roll the window. Just a minute. I'm on the phone. I'll be inside in a minute. And she didn't really seem to bother her. But man, it hurt me. I thought, what am I doing? So here's what I began to do. I began to say, okay, all the way home, I'm going to catch up with calls. But when I reach like a boundary, and my first boundary was when I turn into the neighborhood, I'm going to get off the phone. That's going to be my safe zone. Didn't work for me. I got off the phone, but mentally, I'm still on the phone. You know what I'm talking about? I'm still engaged. One guy came in one day from a long day at work, and his kids rushed up, Daddy, Daddy, and his wife said, kids, come here. Daddy's not home yet. And they said, yeah, sure he is. He's right over there. And she said, we know that. He just doesn't know that. He'll be home in about 20 minutes. Smart wife, real stupid husband. So I had to back up my boundary. I thought when I cross this street on my way home, that'll be my safe zone. Still wasn't far enough. Finally, I found about a 3-mile boundary. And whenever I saw that marquee to that neighborhood, whoever I was talking to said, hey, man, we need to pick this up tomorrow. I just entered the safe zone. And a lot of guys who know me know what I'm talking about. And they say, man, good for you. I wish I could. I said, hey, who's keeping you from doing this? But not only would I get off the phone, mentally, I would discipline myself to say, okay, now today, I know my wife had this, this, and this on her calendar. We prayed about it this morning. I know my daughter did this and this. I need to engage with them and ask them how to do it. Do you see what I'm saying here? Now, I have not mastered this, but I just want you to know, man, the best time to start doing this is in your 30s. And then you set that pattern. You're going to be more productive because relationships are going to be more meaningful. You're going to be able to engage in stuff that really matters the most. The fall season of life. 40s to about 60. Okay? How many of you in the fall season? Yeah, applause. There you go. Fall season is all about influence. You've picked the right seeds. You've sown them well. Now you're reaping more than you sow. You ought to be able to leverage that. You're not perfect, but you've managed even your mistakes well. You have this potential for a great harvest. In this season of life, you ought to have more fun directing traffic, man. because you have set yourself up well for this incredible harvest that you have. Now, there's going to be a danger in the fall season, a danger of a midlife crisis, because a lot of guys who haven't transitioned well in these seasons get to their 40s and all of a sudden, man, life isn't as fulfilling anymore. They've lived life without any margin. Relationships have suffered. They begin to think, that woman over there I'm married to, she's not making me happy. It's her fault. I'm going to find somebody who will. And they begin to have a great crisis in that time. So it's going to be a potential danger if you don't transition well into this season. The big question in the fall season of life is, can the mistakes I've made in the past, can they be redeemed? A lot of you guys who've been doing the authentic manhood material, a lot of guys have said, as I said when I first was introduced to it years ago, man, I wish I had heard this in my 20s. How many of you have said that? Well, we didn't, but now we know it. And God can redeem the mistakes. Now let's take what we know and apply it now so we'll be better in the future. But that's going to be the big question. We sat down with a guy by the name of Dan Hoggatt, who did not choose seeds wisely, did not sow them well, and he reaped some terrible things from the decisions he made. I want you to hear his story.
In the early years, the spring season of my life, as a child, I was real active in sports, good in school. I made straight A's, and had a lot of friends around the neighborhood. I grew up in a home where I was taught if I was responsible and did the right things that my life would be good. And met my first wife in college, and we were married, and I ended up with a really good job, a career in engineering, and pursued that till my early 30s. And I had money, I had a great job, I had a wonderful wife, I even had a daughter, but I knew that I didn't know the truth. And I'd seen a few people that I kind of looked toward and thought they know something that I don't know. As I got into the summer season of my life, I knew there was something wrong. I knew something needed to change. I knew my wife wasn't happy. I didn't know how to be a father. Although I was doing great, as most people would think as a father, I knew that I couldn't tell my daughter the truth. I didn't understand life, and I began searching at that time. A lot of issues began to raise up in my life. I went through a divorce, and when I went through my divorce, I received several DWIs and was facing jail time or prison time if I didn't quit drinking. And my career continued to progress. I did outstanding at my job, was promoted several times. And about 2 years after my divorce, I can remember in a bar at 3 in the morning, calling out to God. It was the first night I had drank in over 2 years. And I said, God, if you're really there, I give you my life. It was about 2 hours later that I ended up driving my car. It was the first night I said I had drank. I was arrested for my 4th DUI and ended up being sentenced to prison. During that last year waiting to go to prison, I fell into a major drug addiction. During that time, I lost everything that I had. I lost my home, my life savings. Because of the drugs, I was court-ordered not to have any contact with my daughter without direct supervision. And then it was at prison where a lot of things began to change for the good. And I was put in a cell with a guy whose nickname in prison was Preacher Man. He began to pray with me. He gave me a Bible and started asking me to read it. And I can remember that he told me that faith comes by hearing the Word of God. And then he told me just read the Bible. Within 2 months, God completely changed my life. He became very real to me. I now knew God deeply. And my relationship began immediately being restored with my daughter, with my family, with my parents. And when I left prison 10 months later, the first thing that I got to do was see my daughter again. But that was kind of the summer and into the fall of my life. I can remember leaving prison, and my heart was back at the prison. I knew so many men there needed to hear the message of hope. At the root of it was not knowing God personally, and so many men don't know that message. The one thing I'd like to share with men is no matter what their spring life and summer of their life was like, that the fall and winter toward the end of their life can be magnificent with God. With Him, it's been unbelievable. I've spent 10 to 12 years following him now, and it's been the best time of my life.
That's encouraging, isn't it, guys? That even though you crash, even though things just really run off the tracks like that God is God of grace. There's no sin too big for him to forgive. It is a superabundant grace. And what can separate us from the love of God? Absolutely nothing, if we're truly humble and repent. And so that's the story a lot of men need. A lot of guys that you begin to try to say, man, why don't you join us to study about authentic manhood? A lot of guys feel like, hey, what's the use? I just messed up too bad. You need to explain to them, no, God still loves you. He's still there. He still wants to help you. The last season of a man's life is the winter. About 60 and beyond. How many of you are in the sage season of life? Awesome, man. That is terrific. A lot of times guys get here, they don't know what to do with themselves, because a lot of times even in churches don't know what to do with them. But you see this beautiful multi-generational environment in the scriptures where the older men are teaching the younger men, the older women are teaching the younger women. And even those guys are learning from the younger guys. Paul told Timothy, man, don't let anybody look down on you because you're young. And so you see this wonderful connection between all these generations. And that's the Bible. The winter season, the sage season, should be marked by wisdom, experience, and respect. Now, here's the deal. Just because you're 60 plus doesn't mean you have wisdom and respect. You may have a lot of experiences, but you ought to be picking the right seeds, sowing them well, handling your successes and your failures well, and then that's going to set you up to have great wisdom and great respect. And a lot of younger men will be drawn to you, not because you're perfect, but they see, man, I want to know what makes that guy tick. Proverbs 20:29 says, the glory of young men is their strength, but the splendor of old men is their gray hair. Roddy, you and I guess we don't have any splendor because we don't have any hair. But it's not just talking about hair or the color of it, but it's talking about in this season, man, there ought to be this great wisdom and respect. The big danger in the sage season, the winter season, is to believe the lie, buy the lie that you can no longer contribute. And that's the way a lot of people think, the way a lot of churches think. You need to stop buying the conventional retirement lie. The conventional retirement lie is, man, work hard, stock money away in a 401k, and then eventually, man, you can reach this time, you can just kind of unplug and then just kind of enjoy life. Problem is, that's the way you think, and that's what you do, life's going to be so unfulfilling. And that's when you kind of start to die, because you have nothing to live for. First of all, there is no biblical plan of retirement. That doesn't mean you shouldn't organize your life financially so you can pull back a little. It just means that you shouldn't unplug and wait to die. You don't see that in scriptures. Don't buy that lie. The major opportunity during your 60s and beyond should be your flexibility. You're not having to work as many hours to pay the bills because you've managed your finances well. You've organized your life so you've got a little more flexibility. You can be agile and mobile. The family in South Carolina, the guy that would dip his wife, the great mentor for me, Vernon McCurry. Vernon is 86 now. His wife, Peggy, is 81. They've been married for 60 plus years. We vacationed with them this past summer in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I'm watching him, same guy I remember, even more so. Loving his boys, loving his grandkids, loving his wife. Renewed their vows on the beach. And I keep looking at that guy and saying, man, I want to be like that guy. When he retired, he went to work. I mean, he was so flexible. He had managed his life so well. He began to lead initiatives for the state of South Carolina to make foster care and adoption more effective. He's got the governor's ear. Man, you know who he's like? In the Old Testament, those spies who went into the wilderness, okay, there were 12, and 10 of them died because they couldn't see what God saw, and so they died. But 2 of them, Joshua and Caleb, man, we want to go in and take the land. Well, finally, when they go into the promised land, this has been years later, now Caleb is 85 years old. And so when they're divvying up the land, you know what? Caleb is lobbying for a special piece of real estate. He said, I want the hill country. Now, we're not talking about a little cabin, to watch the sunset. He said, I want the hill country because, he said, I've heard there's still giants there. He said, and I am just as young and vigorous today to do battle with them. Here's this 85-year-old dude wielding a sword. Don't you want to be that guy? Man, I want to go out